We're in the information age, but facts are in short supply. Reject the noise, ask bold questions, and seek the truth. With FBI whistleblower and common sense extremist, Steve Friend. This is the American Radicals Podcast.
It is the American Radicals Podcast. It's Friday. Congratulations. You made it through the Monday through Friday grind. It's February 6th, 2026, 2/6/26. That's kind of cool. And welcome to us at 12 o'clock Eastern on AmRadPod. That is always on rumble.com/AmRadPod. And now I finally got it, guys. YouTube. The handle at AmRadPod. And if you'd like to listen to us after the fact, the audio format, you can do that on iTunes and Spotify and iHeart. We drop those episodes right after we get done recording. Should be around 1 o'clock Eastern. And as always, a reminder, if you're on any of those platforms, we appreciate all the engagement we can get. Commenting, following, subscribing, liking, do all those things. Trick the algorithm. Let's get as many people radicalized as possible into our commonsensical way of thinking. Today, to close out the week, I'm going to do a primer on some spy stuff. It's all about the spy game. We're going to talk about Section 702 of FISA. Also, Executive Order 12333, a blast from the past. That should make my buddy George Hill kind of happy. FBI counterintelligence cases. And then the president is suing his own Treasury Secretary. ICE, a spying tool, could be used against citizens now, and the latest California tax. Again, it's all about the spy game. Let's get after it. And before we get in, just an administrative note, just kind of pull back the veil a little bit here. Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain, except I'm the only guy behind the curtain here. So for those who are unaware, I had to pre-record this episode and yesterday's episode. So Madam Friend had to go out of town, and out of an abundance of caution, I thought, I got to handle the little ones around here. I think I'm going to pre-tape AmRad Pod and then schedule it to go as usual, 12 o'clock. And it's a good thing I did yesterday because got into a pretty bad automobile accident on the interstate. Thankfully, nobody was hurt, but I'm going to need to handle some administrative stuff, which is why I'm pre-taping today's episode, so I will not be involved or monitoring the chat. If an asteroid happens to hit Earth, I won't be reporting on it. But that's okay. I think we got some good stuff to go on because I want to talk about some spy stuff. And we can begin over at Defense One, where the nominee to lead the NSA is backing as they label it, controversial spy law, and that is all about FISA Section 702. So this guy, his name is Lieutenant General Josh Rudd. He's the president's pick to lead Cyber Command and the NSA. He told lawmakers that he supports the use of FISA Section 702 and said that in his experience, consuming intelligence gathered through that is, quote, indispensable and critical for national security. Now, look, this guy's a lieutenant general in the military. He doesn't really entertain FISA 702 from a law enforcement context. I mean, he's worried about going overseas and breaking things and hurting feelings and killing bad guys, which is sort of what FISA 702 was intended for. But in light of how bureaucracies exist, self-licking ice cream cones, constantly trying to justify their existence, seize onto more ground, make work projects for themselves, and just the nature of government. Over and over again, we see it expanding outwards and encroaching on citizens' rights. It is a concern, maybe outside of the context of the NSA, where my understanding is they're relatively responsible with Section 702 FISA. And what is FISA 702 for those who don't know? 702 gives agencies like NSA legal permission to order internet and telecom providers to hand over communication data on foreign targets for use in national security investigations, and they don't need a warrant to do it. So, said a little bit differently, a little bit more common speak here, as long as your target is overseas and they're a target of an intelligence investigation, or I mean, in a military context, the same thing, and they're representing a foreign entity, then you don't need a warrant because there's no Fourth Amendment for foreigners engaging in activity in a foreign land on behalf of a foreign land. So that's how there's a workaround for a warrant requirement when it comes to getting information about a person's private communications. Not American, not part of the social compact. Well, there is a controversy, though, because this law has been proven to have been abused against Americans. It's very convenient. It's a great tool to have for a criminal investigator, and there is no warrant requirement because there is something called incidental collection. So let's say that you are doing a benign and innocent thing. You're actually just surveilling some sort of foreign person in Russia who's representing Russia while they're in Russia itself. You were able to scoop up and hoover up all the information connected to their internet activity, their telecommunications activity. Okay, we're all in the good. But the whole thing about communications is there's two parties at least. So, what if that person in Russia happens to be talking to somebody in America who is an American, who is part of the social compact and does have that Fourth Amendment protection, allegedly in the land of the free? Well, how does that work? Well, the way that it's worked now, it's commonly understood is it was gathered up in good faith. We just happen to have it. We can access it if we're Uncle Sam, if we're daddy government. We don't need to get a warrant for that person. So you can see how there's some pitfalls here. I want to go into some of those controversies here, and we can go to a left wing source. So, as we're coming up now on April being the renewal date for Section 702 of FISA without a warrant requirement, there's a conversation going on about like, who's going to fall on which side and how the political winds are sort of shaping that up. A headline from The Intercept: controversial warrantless spying law expiring soon, and Trump officials are silent on it. We actually haven't had an official statement from the White House. Now, The Intercept, again, it's a left-leaning source, but they're pretty fair on this one. Democrats who voted for the law 2 years ago are under increasing pressure to support a warrant requirement. And then Republicans who voted for reforms under the Biden administration, they want to flip back to supporting it because, our guys are in charge now. So we want to have that ability. We want to have that tool. We don't want that warrant requirement. It's very political now. It's not actually about that pesky, dusty document with Fourth Amendment protections. As long as we have the ring, Boromir style, Lord of the Rings, making our movie reference on the AMRAD pod, guys, well, then it's all good. We can use this tool for good. But it's when those other guys have it that it's the problem. And you can see that really integrity is only a problem if you got it. Now, this law is up for renewal in April of this year because 2 years ago, we were having the exact same conversation, and it seemed for a time that there was an appetite to at least say, hey, look, we're going to renew FISA 702. The ability is going to be there. But if in the event that you're going to actually look at the information that relates to an American citizen rather than a foreigner in a foreign land representing a foreign government, then you're going to have to get a warrant. You're going to have to show probable cause to a judge who says, okay, we understand that you've collected that information. You have to silo it off. You can't look at it until you justify it to a judge because we have this thing called the Fourth Amendment, which protects, allegedly, Americans against illegal and improper searches and seizures of them and their papers. And at this point, it's all digital, right? So let's go back in time into the capsule. 2 years ago, a story from the New York Times, at one point a newspaper, and in 2 years ago, they still were no longer a newspaper. But the headline reads, House passes 2-year surveillance law extension without warrant requirement. What happened 2 years ago? Who remembers? Well, it came down to passing the law because originally Donald Trump, who was then a candidate for president, wasn't actually reelected at that point, was saying, we got to kill FISA. We don't need to have it. And all the Republicans were mega Doppler excited to express their fealty to the would-be next president of the United States. And they were holding the line strong. I mean, there were some neocons out there who still wanted it and saying we need it for national security, but they didn't have enough because the Republicans, with the leadership of Mike Johnson, were holding the line. And then it came time to vote. Well, in a major turnaround, the House on Friday passed a 2-year reauthorization of an expiring warrantless surveillance law that had stalled this week amid GOP resistance stoked by former President Donald J. Trump. The bill would extend a provision known as Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA, that is set up to lapse next Friday. It was a remarkable resuscitation of the measure from a collapse just days ago when Trump urged lawmakers to kill FISA. Now, here's the most dramatic portion of it. In an extraordinary moment on the House floor, the proposal to add a warrant requirement failed in a tie. So, how does the goings-on occur? In order to pass an amendment in the House, it has to be actually a victory. It has to be +1, the yays +1 over the nays. If it's a tie, the nays have it. Ties go to the nay. And at the time, it was 212 votes to require the warrant. And there was 211 that said, yeah, we don't need it. Maybe we need it for national security. And traditionally, it's kind of like the way the Senate operates, because the vice president is head of the Senate, and that could be the tie-breaking vote. If it comes down to it, the Speaker of the House will weigh in. And Mike Johnson decided to weigh in and voted to make it 212 to 212 a tie. Ergo, the amendment didn't pass. No warrant requirement. FISA sailed on through for another 2 years. Congratulations, everyone. Well done, Republicans, who a few days before were trying to express fealty to Donald Trump, who was saying, kill it. And then they reversed course. Then after that, we had to do some mop-up duty, because it is, after all, politics. Intercept covered down on how, well, Democrats were in favor of FISA 702 and doing some spying on Americans when their guys were in charge, but now they're opposed. And then vice versa for the Republicans. When that auto pen human Roomba was in charge, we didn't trust the government, right? But now that the president's mean, orange, and literally Hitler, his acolytes, his principals within agencies like the NSA and the FBI, they can just go out and root around your emails without any sort of warrant requirement. So that's fine, right? So we're flipping and we're flopping, however the political winds go. But we had to do mop-up duty 2 years ago. So Mike Johnson, after stabbing the base in the back, because all the stalwarts on the Republican side, all the would-be small R Republican constitutionalists were saying, get a damn warrant, he betrayed them. And he had been this guy who'd ridden in on the wave of, we're eliminating Kevin McCarthy, we're putting a Tea Party type of guy in there, and he's going to hold everything accountable. And this was a betrayal. So then he high-stepped it that day after voting in order to pass FISA Section 702, and he rushed on down to Mar-a-Lago to stand behind Donald Trump. And Donald Trump was actually asked about that. And did Donald Trump, then candidate for president, sort of pivot? Who remembers this one?
Go ahead, please.
Do you support the House's FISA bill that was passed this morning?
Which one?
The FISA bill, and did you talk to any?
Well, I'm not a big fan of FISA. I looked at it and I studied it, and I know it probably better than anybody. They spied on my campaign. You do know that, right? And they did lots of other bad things. I'm not a big fan of FISA, but I told everybody, I said, do what you want. They put a lot of checks and balances on, and I guess it's down to 2 years now, so that it would come due in the early part of my administration on the basis that we live up to the polls, because all the polls, we just had another one come out, we're leading by a lot.
All right, that's enough. That's enough Trumpism. He's just like a cat chasing a laser pointer. It gets a little bit cumbersome. He said, I don't like FISA. By the way, they spied on my campaign, and I got a problem with it. But yeah, just do what you want. I'm not really that interested, which I kind of have a problem with. And if you notice, if you happen to be watching us here on rumble.com/AmradPod or YouTube @AmradPod, or even checking us out on Spotify, flip on the video here, we're like 15 minutes into the episode, you see Mike Johnson standing behind Daddy President because he wants to get that air cover there. I didn't betray anybody. See, Donald Trump, who's not interested at all, is saying I did a good job and we'll re-review it in 2 years. So now that time is upon us. And has there been any other evidence in place here? Donald Trump even referenced that there was spying that went on against his campaign. And I want to connect FISA 702 with something else that's presidential, executive orders. So this is another blast from the past, another archived article that I wanted to bring up, and it comes from Wired magazine. And this was actually written in the very, very nascent days of the Trump Part 1 administration. The latter portion of the Obama, early portion of the Donald Trump, there was a lot of concern, not from the political right, but from the political left, about what had just happened with an executive order 12333, 12333. And the headline reads from Wired, just in time for Trump, the NSA loosens its privacy rules. Over the last month, Director of National Intelligence James Clapper and Attorney General Loretta Lynch signed off on changes to NSA rules that allow the agency to loosen the standards for what raw surveillance data it can hand off to the other 16 American intelligence agencies. Keeping American surveillance agencies from surveilling Americans has always been in part a matter of trust that they won't break the law or abuse legal loopholes, but the untested Trump administration makes that trust more than tenuous than ever before. Now, this relates to this executive order 12333, 12333. And essentially, what Barack Obama did in the very latter days of his administration was say, whatever the NSA is able to hoover up, they can just give to other members of the intelligence community, to include agencies like the FBI. The FBI, which is law enforcement. Why would they need intelligence just for intelligence sake? Oh, no, to further their investigations for either criminal matters or national security. No warrant requirement. Now, at the time, the left over at Wired, especially, they're like The Intercept. They were pumping their fists for Barack Obama, and they felt like this was a betrayal because they thought that Donald Trump, he's mean, orange, literally Hitler. He's going to come in and he's going to have his NSA get up a whole bunch of intelligence so he can go after his enemies. But Barack Obama and his acolytes, the Loretta Lynches, the James Clappers, they knew a little bit better than Wired magazine was presuming, because they knew that there was institutional capture over at agencies like the NSA, the FBI, where it didn't matter who the occupant was at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. They just wanted this tool so they could use it. They could spy on a campaign maybe, or just use it for bureaucratic reasons to have success and be able to claim, hey, look, we shut down all these nihilistic violent extremists out there, anti-government, anti-authority violent extremists, whatever the term du jour is. We'll use this tool because it's not useful to us just to obtain intelligence for intelligence sake. We have to move something forward. And 12333 allowed them to do that. They clung onto it very gleefully, and it's yet another ring of power. I want to then kind of close the loop on Section 702 and the problems that exist with this. This is 12333, another area. And then the third leg of the stool, FBI counterintelligence investigations. Now, I don't have any visual aids for this, but you should know that the Domestic Investigations Operations Guide for the FBI sort of lays out guidelines to open up counterintelligence investigations. Now, when you think investigation, you think, oh, bad guy, right? Spy. Not so much for foreign counterintelligence, because if you're the target of a foreign spy, let's say, we'll go back to Russia. Russia sends somebody over here who's one of their operatives, and they try to flip an American professor who might have some sort of institutional knowledge, or somebody who works at within infrastructure or within our own government. They want to flip that person. That person has the information. The Russians want it. Well, if the FBI catches wind that an American could be targeted even for recruitment by a foreign agency, the FBI can open up a case on that American to protect them. Right? We want to know what your vulnerabilities are. So the FBI is allowed to look at your bank accounts, and your emails. Now, let's see if we can just kind of noodle out the problems with this. Well, one, there's no warrant requirement. Sounds a lot like FISA 702, right? Well, what if you get a situation like Donald Trump reference? Like you have a interest in spying on a foreign campaign or on a presidential campaign. Well, you have foreign counterparts, right? Well, why don't you just ping one of your counterparts to push one of their foreign guys who you've already got under surveillance to try to contact an American, the American in the campaign? Well, then we can open up a counterintelligence case on the American campaign because they could be victims. They could be targets of a counterintelligence operation, of an intelligence operation. And in lieu of how we want to counter that, we're going to look at everything that they've got going on right now. It's almost like it all works together, that anybody for any reason could be investigated by an FBI. I mean, take it this far. Who has checked the spam box on their emails lately? If in spam there's a contact from China, like probably all of us have, seeing as how our internet security protocols in this country kind of stink. How many people use TikTok and have given over their email address to the Chinese Communist Party? Well, what if you got a spam email from China where everything is part of the Chinese Communist Party government? That's enough. You've been contacted by a foreign party from the Chinese government. You could be the target of an intelligence operation. So we need to open up a case on you. All right, we've got a couple other pieces here that are worth getting into just to see what is the pushback, what is the remedy. And I'll actually go back to The Intercept for this one. This is a recent piece. So you had a picture of Director Kashyap Patel there. And the headline reads, FBI's warrantless search ruled unconstitutional in a blow to government spying. So maybe, Steve, are you making a big deal over this spy game stuff? I mean, maybe it's all sewn up. Maybe it's all done. And they cite this guy who was actually arrested back in 2013. And I'm going to butcher his name. His name is Agron Hasbarjrami. I don't know. We'll just call him Ag. So Ag was arrested September 2011 because he was trying to fly to Turkey and he wanted to go then into Pakistan and join a terrorist group. That was the allegation from the Department of Justice. He pled guilty and he was sentenced in 2013, and that seemed to settle everything. But then it was revealed, because of the Edward Snowden release of documents, that the NSA were and FBI were looking and querying databases without applying for the warrant. The government argued that the FBI is free to search those databases because, we just had the law passed here. And at the time, it was the exact same thing. Mike Johnson, 212. They don't need a warrant to look at it. So this judge, her name is LaShawn Hall, said that in an investigation that stretched for months, there was no reason why the government could not have sought a warrant, but she declined to suppress the evidence that the FBI had collected because those agents had operated in good faith, because they followed the law and the policy. Even though the law is unconstitutional, I mean, they were doing what they were supposed to do. They were keeping up with the protocols and the policies within their respective agency. So we're still going to allow this evidence in there. And I mean, who's going to cry for a guy who wants to become a terrorist, fly over to Pakistan so that he can engage in some sort of violence? But now we have a precedent. Yeah. You probably should have gotten a warrant, but you didn't have to. So it's not really a victory. It's a Pyrrhic victory at best, a partial victory. Now, back to our present situation. We had this fight going on with this partial government shutdown, and finally they were able to come to an agreement. And the Republican, who all the MAGA guys hate the most, wanted to try to throw some stuff into this omnibus because as long as we're throwing stuff in, can we get some good things in there? And that was Thomas Massie, who was the representative from Kentucky, and he tried to put in a requirement to get a warrant for FISA Section 702. And actually, I got the image of it here. Here it is, the amendment to the Senate amendment to H.R. 7148, Consolidated Appropriations Act 2026, offered by Mr. Massie of Kentucky. Basically, get a warrant if you want to use information that's been collected in an investigation of an American citizen. And the Republicans said, no, we're not interested. And the entire amendment was tossed out. So we're back to where we were 2 years ago. But it actually is worse because we've queried and asked questions of leaders. And we had the picture before of Kash Patel, but let's go and find out from the people who kind of know a lot more than Kash Patel. He's really busy flying private and probably taking the tracker out of the jet, so you don't know how often he goes down to Nashville to do booty calls. And he doesn't really understand the goings on, but I think Christopher Wray kind of had a grasp of it. And he was asked some really hard questions. And this was right around the time that these questions were being asked 2 years ago. This comes from the FBI's own website, and it's statements that Christopher Wray, then director, made regarding the FBI's use or misuse of FISA 702, and just how it was so darn important. Remember, the baseline for FISA 702, it's for counterintelligence purposes. So anything outside of that is kind of like, well, wait, hold on here. Well, why are we using this? You're using the wrong tool, guys. According to Chris Wray, U.S. persons' queries were usually conducted in the early stages of an investigation when it's usually still too early to establish probable cause or demonstrate urgency. So let me get this straight. We don't have probable cause, an allegation, or any suspicion that this person is engaging in any unlawful activity, so we have to look deeper at them. So the police agency, federal law enforcement, to a tune of $11 billion says, we don't have any proof that you did anything, but maybe if we dig deeper, we could do that. What sort of oversight is there? What sort of vetting goes on about who you're going to do that with? Well, I mean, we saw elements of that. Were you a mom who went to a school board meeting? Are you a Catholic who goes to the Latin Mass? Are you one of those people who likes to pray outside of abortion clinics? Did you have a problem putting a diaper on your face to fly? Did you have questions about an election that happened, where we all went to bed and one guy was in the lead and we all woke up and the other guy was in the lead? Oh, we need to get more probable cause. We should probably access your private communications that happen to be incidentally collected when you got a spam email from China after, you signed up for TikTok. I think that's actually a nice, what we call transition in the business now. No longer a hobbyist podcaster here on the American Radicals podcast. Check us out, YouTube at AmRadPod, Rumble, AmRadPod, all one giant umbrella now. TikTok. Let's pivot away from 702 and from counterintelligence, but we could talk about some spy stuff. So this is an update on a lawsuit against TikTok, one of several lawsuits, and it is from the New York Times. Headline reads, TikTok settles social media addiction lawsuit ahead of a landmark trial. TikTok reached an agreement to settle a lawsuit over claims that social media companies had engineered their products to hook young users, avoiding the first in a series of landmark trials. The lawsuits argue that features like infinite scroll, auto video play, and algorithmic recommendations have led to compulsive social media use and caused depression, eating disorders, and self-harm. Now, TikTok settled the lawsuit. There's a couple more on the horizon. I don't think anybody who has engaged on social media can deny that there's an addictive quality to it. Now, on the spy game, right? I mean, all the talk about, well, we made TikTok sell to an American company. Yeah. What about all the years before that, though? There's no question that TikTok is Chinese spyware that was made and intended to addict its users. I mean, and there's documentation about how the autoplay videos, if you go over to China, are showing people engaging in science experiments and solving complex calculus equations. And then you come over to America and it's the Tide Pod challenge where they put laundry detergent in their mouth and try to swallow it, because the Chinese Communist Party wants to see the American system collapse so they can become the lone superpower. And this is a way that they can do it. It's part of the Cold War that we're having right now with China. Now, this is an element of that. This is one of the tools that they used here. Now, this is going to be adjudicated in court. This settlement here, they're kind of cloak and dagger right now. We don't know what the monetary amounts were. We don't know any sort of agreements that they had to change their algorithms or to take away the infinite scroll, what have you. But this stuff's going to be fleshed out, and then bring in the extra element of, well, if an American entity owns TikTok, what about coordination with the government itself? We saw lots of examples of that over the last 5 or 6 years, particularly during the Biden administration, emails going on between people at the White House and Facebook. And we're sending FBI agents to liaise with social media companies and say, hey, look, we're not telling you how to run your business or anything, but national security, this misinformation here about Hunter Biden, it should probably be suppressed. That went on. Does it really help us to have an American owning TikTok if there's some sort of fascistic relationship, a symbiotic one between the government and these big tech companies that are able to control information? And then, as it's been proven here, at least recognized by the settlement here to a certain extent, there is an addictive quality to using these platforms. So the company can addict you and get you to use it nonstop. And then at the same time, the government can capture your internet activity and review it because FISA lets them do it. I mean, what's to stop it? There's no warrant requirement. It was just incidental collection. We happen to be looking at some Chinese target, and parenthetically, there was a spam email connected to you. We should open up a full counterintelligence investigation of you. And Your Honor, we're just operating in good faith right now. We don't need to get a warrant. It is, after all, national security. And outside of TikTok, I mean, that's outside the government, but there's been revelations about Palantir. Palantir is this tech company. It's giant, it's nerdy database stuff, right? And the government has a big contract, our government, with Palantir, where they're organizing all the disparate, government agencies and the information that they're able to curate and collect on the American people. And they want to house it all underneath this Palantir thing, right? So there's a lot of concern about it. And again, it's sort of fascistic in that the American government is partnering with Palantir and their value went up, and who knows how many people within government were already invested in Palantir or maybe have jobs lined up for themselves after the fact. But let's look at Palantir in the context of ICE. So this sounds good, but there is always the cautionary tale, particularly if we're talking about the spy game. This is reporting over from my friend Tracy Beans at The High Wire, and the headline reads, Palantir's elite. Not all maps are meant to guide us. All right. ELITE, which stands for Enhanced Leads Identification and Targeting for Enforcement. Man, somebody got promoted for that acronym. It's software developed by Palantir for ICE, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, to find, classify, prioritize illegal aliens for deportation. All right, this is a tool for ICE. We want to have mass deportations, all aboard, all above the strategy here. Let's use some tech. Well, ELITE is a map that pulls data from across federal systems and uses it to compile dossiers on people. It tells ICE agents where individuals live and how likely they are to be there so ICE can prioritize target-rich environments. Make no mistake, though. While this tool is currently highlighted for use against illegal aliens, the underlying architecture is the perfect blueprint for broader surveillance. What ICE is doing right now with ELITE, using statistical likelihood rather than individualized probable cause. Probable cause. What did Christopher Wray say? Oh, that's right. In the very early days of investigation of somebody, we don't have any probable cause. Well, now you have artificial intelligence, essentially, that's just collecting data that happens to be at the government's fingerprints. It just is all spread around into these various agencies and have been able to get it. What if we collect it all together under one system, and then we can just play the statistical game? How is it called here? It was statistical likelihoods. So no probable cause, but we've determined after looking at Social Security and Medicare and your DMV and whatever, that you're likely to be doing something that we find suspicious. We don't have probable cause, mind you. I mean, maybe we should query what we have that we've been able to collect by the NSA, because we don't need a warrant requirement. They can just hand it on over. What about communications that were happen to be captured because you use TikTok and now you get spam emails from China? Maybe you could be the target of an intelligence operation from a foreign actor. We should open up a full investigation now. And guess what? We're off and running. We're going to get your bank records, and we'll find something. You're certainly just saying things online that we find very disturbing. Now, Palantir Elite is being used for now for ICE, for illegal aliens. Do you really, for a second, think that the same government that keeps slipping and flopping and saying, we got to kill FISA. Well, no, we need it for national security. It's indispensable. Do you think that they're just going to shutter it, or they're going to silo it just for illegal alien deportations? Or is it just going to be a very convenient tool? And then once they do, and it gets challenged, they're going to make the same argument that they've continued to make over and over again with FISA and all these other spy tools, and say, we just have to have it. This is what Christopher Wray said when he testified, quote, multiple federal district courts and appellate courts have considered the issue, and no court has ever held that a warrant is required for the FBI to conduct U.S. person queries to blind ourselves from information already lawfully in our holdings. We got the law passed, guys. We're going to renew it. It's lawfully in their possession. What's stopping them from just taking a peek at you? Nothing. Nothing at all. The guardrails are completely lifted. That pesky, dusty document that has that Fourth Amendment in there, that's extinct. It's just a remnant of the past, something that don't bother with. Don't consider. Welcome to the new age. Welcome to the new order here in the land of the free. Yeah, that's a joke. All right, let's go to a couple more stories I want to get to here before we close things out for the week. And this one I just kind of found interesting and precedent setting and potentially problematic. And it is the story of Donald Trump is suing his own Treasury Department, from NPR. Headline, Trump sues IRS and Treasury for $10 billion over leaked tax information. Well, I guess that, IRS was kind of spying on him, right? President Trump suing the IRS and Treasury Department for $10 billion. I think he named Scott Bessent in the lawsuit too, which is hysterical because it's a guy who he is, for all intents and purposes, looks like they're buddies. But his lawyers had to do it that way. So Trump is accusing the federal agency of a failure to prevent a leak of his tax information to news outlets between 2018 and 2020. Well, he wasn't the president then, but he's brought the lawsuit now. So precedent setting. What's stopping the president from ordering his Secretary of the Treasury from settling this lawsuit? I mean, just allowing the president to pilfer our Treasury. I'm not saying that Donald Trump wasn't wronged by that. I mean, $10 billion. And you'd have to really show me an actuarial table about the real damages that were inflicted on him by revealing the tax documents. And I'm not defending the leaking of the tax documents. And the IRS is going to have a really hard time defending themselves because they already sent the guy to jail who did it. It's like my buddy Kyle Seraphin, right? He's got that lawsuit going against the FBI. The FBI fired the individual who went after people for coronavirus. And then Kyle and some others are suing the FBI for the FBI going after them for coronavirus. The FBI is trying to defend themselves. It can't really make a reasonable defense, but it's no different here. The IRS fired the person who engaged in the unlawful action. It was actually a contractor. So that person, the contract was terminated. They fired. It was with Booz Allen Security Company. And then they put that guy in jail for that. The FBI just wound up firing the person. But this individual at the IRS in prison for committing this violation, I think Trump has a pretty strong case. It just sets a really scary precedent where the guy in charge of the executive branch could just order his subordinates within the executive branch to pay him lots of money. All right. And that's a conversation about the current president. Let's talk about the guy who's probably in line to be the next president. And it is also keeping with our spy game theme here at a state level. This one comes from Zero Hedge, and it's all about California. Governor American Psycho, Gavin Newsom, maybe President American Psycho in 2028. Headline reads, California plans mileage tax to bleed citizens for even more cash. Let's close the loop here, guys. I think I can make a connection. Lawmakers in California have moved to direct the Transportation Commission to prepare a study. So it's just as its infant stages right now. They're probably going to spend millions of dollars on a study about how they can get millions of more dollars. But they want to charge people for every mile they drive, because they are losing on tax revenue from having pressured all these people to use electric vehicles. So, I mean, apart from that being really gross and theft, that means that you're going to have to tell the government every mile you drive. What do you want to bet that they ask where you drove? We're going to have to audit that mileage. Where did you drive? Why don't you tell us what your travel schedule is? And then on top of that, it's argued here, the Republicans in California are saying, well, that's just not fair because the people who live in big cities, they don't have to drive as much. And the rural people, they're really going to get the shaft on this one. Yeah, it's going to force everybody to move to big cities to avoid these taxes. And do you think they're going to get rid of their gasoline tax to begin with? They're going to get you coming and going financially, but very much like the Palantir elite system. If you're doing some sort of taxation based on every mile driven, you're going to have to be really thorough. You're going to have to find out. You need to get every single mile calculated because California is in such dire financial straits that they're going to want that. It's like 2.5 cents a mile they want to charge. Well, they'll just audit, and you're going to have to account for every single mile you've driven. And that'll contribute to some database, which will probably be at the fingertips of a Palantir elite. And when they get done getting rid of the illegal aliens, or they'll never get rid of them, they'll just change the mission. They'll use that database to look at you because you were saying some things online that we didn't really like. And we don't need a warrant requirement at all. We already have it. It was lawfully collected. You had to turn that on over, right? It's a giant spy game. This is something we have to be on guard for all the time. I mean, almost every single resource that I use today, and I'll put all the links in the show notes here, left-leaning. Because sites like The Intercept might not agree politically with those guys on very much, but you have to give it to them on the integrity issue. They're consistent, and they've been consistent for a long time. They saw this as a problem way back when, and they maybe sort of assigned blame because it was the Republicans doing it, but it doesn't matter what party's doing it. Whoever is in charge cannot seem to resist that ring of power. As long as our guys have it, we'll use it for so much good. There's only one solution. J.R. Tolkien gave it to us. You have to cast the ring into the fire. That's it. That's the only way that you resolve the situation, because it cannot be wielded. It is a power that is beyond your ability to control. It will be all-consuming. You turn these politicians into golems, which is kind of appropriate because that's basically the way they all look now, right? No hair, just skin falling off their bones. They've outlived the collagen that their body was able to produce over the last 80 years. Maybe it's tied to how they just want to spy on Americans. All right, so we've reached the end of the AmRad pod for the day, guys. Reminder, as always, make sure you give us the thumbs up, the follow, the subscribes on YouTube and Rumble and Spotify. X, too, we're there. But I will not leave you without a Pelicans. Completely unrelated to anything, just maybe laugh because this is the way that Madam Friend left. And I'm not a video game player. She left for the day. But if I want to get her back on task and doing some stuff, I might have to become a video game player. Today's palate cleanse, guys.
Yo, babe, what movie should we watch? Hello, let's pick a movie. Fine.
Babe, I thought we were watching a movie.
I understand now.
Why are you talking to your controller?
Yo, babe, hurry up, we're gonna be late.
I'm not ready yet. I need like 45 more minutes.
Oh my God.
I'm ready. Let's go.
Hey, babe, did you find everything we need?
Yep. I'm just gonna walk around the store again just to make sure I didn't forget anything. Never mind, I got everything I need. Why do you have a PS5 controller?
No reason.
Ooh, chicken or steak? Chicken? I'll get chicken. Mm-hmm.
Can you order it?
Yes. Ordering food.
All right, guys. Appreciate it as always. We will be back with you on Monday here, noontime Eastern. Until then, have a great weekend.
You've been listening to the American Radicals podcast. Find us on YouTube, Rumble, and X at AmRadPod.